Welcome to the I Love Wine and Dogs podcast, created, produced, and hosted by Heidi Huebner, with engineering and production by Timothy StoneDancer Coleman. This show was created to celebrate good wine, amazing pets, and people from around the world who are doing great things in their local communities. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the I Love Wine and Dogs podcast, created by Miss Heidi Huebner. Without any further ado, here's my sister. What's up, Heidi?
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. So excited to be here. And I'm so excited to introduce our guest, Jon Brown, and his dog, Lola. Timothy, my brother, I have a special introduction to a new member, Wally Jack.
Ooh, what's up, Wally Jack? How you doing, buddy?
This is
excellent.
Wally Jack.
What's up, Wally Jack? How old is he?
Good man. Wally Jack, we just rescued him 3 weeks ago from the Lang Foundation, and he's a 1-year-old pug. Him and Ripley, our 2-year-old, love each other. They play so well together. They're hysterical. And he just has all the temperament and personality to want to be a therapy dog. So when my friends saw him, they said, "Oh my gosh, Heidi, we have your next dog." And they were right. So he is right now we're doing obedience class together, and he just needs to grow up a little bit. But I've been documenting and filming from the second we got him, just to show he was a wild child at first. But again, 1-year-olds are still puppies, but he just loves people. He loves dogs. He has no fear. He's just super sweet and super smart. So welcome, Wally Jack.
Welcome, Wally Jack. I love it. Our new mascot. That's excellent. Well, and I love how you say that you are videotaping the process, because I think, a lot of folks out there in the world, they hear, the slogan, adopt, don't shop, right? And they see our commercials, and, more and more people are catching us on Spotify. But I think a lot of folks also have the question of, what is it going to be like? What should I be doing when I first bring home our new family member? So this is going to be a really great kind of documentary of Wally Jack's beginnings in the house. So we're going to have to also get a really amazing introduction of Lola as well.
Exactly. So I guess I'll introduce Jon, and then Jon can introduce Lola. So Jon Brown is a longtime professional manager and producer in Hollywood and a major dog lover. He produced such movies as Pompeii, Poseidon Adventure, Black Beauty, Reboot, and has several other features and TV series in development. And that's just a very small part of what this man has done. He was born into Hollywood royalty in the business, and he grew up in the world of entertainment. He definitely has some good stories to share with us. So hi, Jon and Lola. That is actually Lola's smile. And then this was funny. I know Jon doesn't drink wine. He drinks vodka, which is, listen, it's all good. But I said, Jon, I love wine and dogs. So I'm going to introduce our wine of the show. And this is a Foley Johnson Estate Cabernet. This is a funny story about this. One of my coworkers gave this to me as a birthday present. And I was like, "Oh my God, this is a really good wine." And he said, "Well, I'm not a wine drinker so much. My son is. I took it from his collection." So rewind before COVID, Stephen and I were out at the Smokehouse restaurant, and there was a table of probably 12 people wine tasting these wines. And I was so intrigued. I went over and said, "Are you guys part of a wine club?" I said, "I don't mean to be nosy, but I love wine." And they said, they are wine members. This is actually in Napa. And they brought back cases, and they were doing a wine tasting in the restaurant. And they actually brought over a glass for me to taste some of the wines. So this puppy right here is about, I think, $130 a bottle. I was like, So I didn't know how much they were, but I thought, wow, for strangers to share some wine tastings with the stranger, that's pretty cool.
Well, yeah, definitely. I'd love the part of this. I'd love to hear the part of the story where when the son realized that the bottle was missing.
I know, right? If he listens to the show, we'll find out.
The jig is up.
Exactly. Hey, it's going to a good cause. We're promoting.
That's exactly right. Oh my gosh, I love it.
But anyway, so before we go on to our interview with Jon Brown, I think we have our first PSA. So everybody will be right back.
We'll be right back after these messages. I Love Wine and Dogs podcast has brand new merchandise. Have you ever looked at something and realized you didn't need it until you saw it? ilovewineanddogs.shop, your one-stop shop to support loving pets, good wine, and great people doing awesome things in their communities. Visit ilovewineanddogs.shop and get that new merch.
Watch season 1 of I Love Wine and Dogs on Spotify.
Wherever you live, go to your local shelter or work with your local rescue group to bring in your new forever loving baby if you're ready. Remember, you got to make sure you're ready for this commitment, but you can foster, you can volunteer. There are so many other ways that you can give back and help your fellow community in the pet world.
Like, share, and subscribe on Facebook and Instagram at I Love Wine and Dogs.
Welcome back to the show. Welcome back, everybody, to our third episode of season 2 of the I Love Wine and Dogs podcast. We are here with Heidi, myself, Timothy, and our guest today, Mr. Jon Brown. Heidi, you want to do a quick intro for Jon?
I will. So again, Jon Brown grew up since a kid, like in the world of Hollywood and entertainment. So I just want to start off by asking, what was it like growing up in Malibu in this world? Because I didn't grow up that way in Kansas City.
Well, I was very fortunate. I mean, my father had a certain amount of stature in Hollywood as a well-known book agent. My mother was a writer. I have a couple sisters who are not in the business. And I knew in an early age what I wanted to do for a living because the movie business was just so fascinating to me. And I remember saying to my father in 10th grade, Dad, what do I need to do to be an agent? And he said, well, you got to know how to figure out 10% of something, and you have to be able to speed read. Yeah, because it's a lot of reading, and you'll fall behind if you can't get through something quickly. I don't know if your listeners are aware of this, but Universal used to be called MCA Universal, and it was a talent agency and a literary agency as well as a studio. And in 1963, the government came in and said, no, you can't do that. It's antitrust. You can't be a buyer and a seller. So you got to jettison something. And my father, instead of going to another agency, got a little tiny office in Beverly Hills, and he would go to his office and work out of that. And I got my training because he would tell me, you sit on this couch, he'd hand me a bunch of contracts and say, read these and learn how to negotiate a contract. Well, how do you learn how to negotiate? I'm just reading. He said, you'll figure it out. And so he would leave and go back to his beach house at 12 o'clock, and he'd say, you got to stay here until the end of the day. And he made me wear a suit. I never had a meeting. I just sat on his couch looking at contracts, wearing a suit all day long. And then I ended up spending 10 years with a guy who became my surrogate father, who was very close with my father, named Al Ruddy. And Al Ruddy was the first producer I ever met when I was 13 years old. My father took me out of 6th grade, and he said, you want to meet somebody really important? And I said, sure, what's that? And he says, he just won the Academy Award for a movie called The Godfather last night, and we're going to go see him. And we went to Ruddy's house up in Benedict Canyon. We walked in, and the party was raging. And Ruddy, was old school. He came up to my father, who was very straight-laced, 3-piece suit, the only person wearing a suit at the party, it turns out, and gave him a hug, and then met me and shook my hand. And I wound up staying in touch with him my entire life. He followed what I did through school, and then for me an office, and I went and had an office with Al and his then partner Andre Morgan, and stayed there for 10 years, and had an absolute ball. His two best friends were Clint Eastwood and Arnold Schwarzenegger. They were in our office every Friday, and they'd come in and they'd just sit around and drink booze and smoke cigars and talk shit. And I got to hang out with these guys, and I was just like, oh my God, this is Hollywood. I love this business. This is so cool. And after 10 years, I left and partnered up with a fellow by the name of Jeff Fall, who I've been partners with now for coming up on 30 years.
Well, so for our listeners, I just want to say, you just dropped what Heidi and I call $1 million nugget, right? Like these $1 million nuggets, we got to kind of resurface them because the story you're saying is so captivating. I want to make sure people catch that, your mom, as an author, wrote about what she and her children were experiencing, and just the act of doing something that you have full control over is life-changing, right? So a lot of folks, I know a bunch of people here in New York City that, oh, I want to be a writer. Oh, I want to be that. I'm like, well, what are you going to write about? Oh, I'm having writer's block. I'm like, how is that possible? You go to the park, you take walks, you see people, you experience restaurants. You could be writing all day, every day about anything, but it has to be personal to you because that's what the audience is going to listen to and be drawn to, right, Heidi? We talk about this sort of thing.
Absolutely. And I also, again, think the fact that your story, Jon, with where you came from and how it just, the thread grew. It's kind of like dumb luck, but not dumb luck. You took advantage of it. You learned and figured it out and spread your wings. And I think learned from your parents good etiquette and business of how to interact with people.
Yeah. I mean, my father was my mother's agent. And so he made sure she had, at that time, the best illustrator in the business. And she had the best publishing house, Franklin Watts, back in the day. And like I said, these were all first-time experiences. Like she wrote a book called Flower Girl, which is about the first time my sister was a flower girl at a wedding. And by the way, those books are still in libraries.
We'll be right back after these messages.
Like, share, and subscribe on Facebook and Instagram at I Love Wine and Dogs.
Here at Tangent, we explore the possibilities of cool climate white wines rooted in the Edna Valley and the Central Coast. These wines challenge expectations and prove that every day can and should be a new adventure. Our innovative spirit is channeled into everything we produce, from colorful cans to screw-capped bottles to our wine itself. We deliver wines with the promise of being vibrant, fresh, and delightfully different. Find us on Instagram and Facebook or call us at 805-269-8200. ilovewineanddogs.shop, your one-stop shop to support loving pets, good wine, and great people doing awesome things in their communities. Welcome back to the show. Heidi and I are here with Jon Brown and his beautiful puppy Lola. And what we're talking about in the show is, all the different cool experiences that Jon has had growing up in Hollywood and all of the different people that he's met and experiences that he's had. But one of the biggest reasons why, and many of you who have been watching our shows already know this, we told you we were going to have a guest on who had experienced personally the fires that just happened out in LA. And, of all the things that go on in a person's life, there is always ebb and flow. So for all of those who become jealous or say, hey, I wish I were this person, or I wish I were you, or I would love to have a day in your shoes, you have to be careful of saying things like that, because life is a full life. That's exactly right. It's not just one-sided. There are so many things that go on. So Jon, I would love it if you could share just a little bit about the fires, but could you start from when did you first become aware that there was a fire, and then what were your actions after that point?
I've recounted this so many times. I know it inside out. 10:30, I looked out my home window and I saw a plume of smoke about a half mile away, but directly up the hill from me. And I said to myself, uh-oh, I guess I should cancel my lunch meeting. This doesn't look good. And so I watched it for the next 2.5 hours as it got worse and worse. And at about 12:30, I realized that there was a chance my house was going to burn down. And so I was thinking, the first thing through my mind was, okay, what am I going to evacuate with? And but for some stupid reason, I said, don't worry about it. Your house is going to make it ultimately. And so I sat there and sort of watched the smoke surround Pacific Palisades in my neighborhood. And then I saw all the cars, because I went up on my roof and I saw all the cars evacuating. My car was small. There was very little I could put in it. And then I also had a race car in my garage, which doesn't have a top. And I knew I couldn't drive off with that because embers would probably blow in. So I watched these cars go nowhere quickly. And then I saw people get out of their cars and start running. And I said, uh-oh, this isn't good. And so I went downstairs. I'd been up on the roof now, and it was about 3 o'clock, about 3:30. And the police were running around, evacuate, you have to leave. I wasn't going to leave. I was going to go down with my house. I lived there 26 years. There was one fire truck in the neighborhood, and I said, screw it, I'm going to stay here, and the cops aren't going to get me off my roof. And so everyone evacuated by about 4:30, 4:45, except for me. And I spent the next 4 hours on my roof. And as you can see by these pictures, it got really hairy. And at nightfall, I was on the roof. I had water pressure. I had been blown off my feet by a gust of wind. We had about 65 to 70 mile an hour winds. And I started to be blown over the edge of my roof and 20 feet down onto concrete. And I immediately flashed on the fact that 3 years ago, I had a very serious accident and I fell off a cliff in Malibu, nearly died, and had to be airlifted out. They couldn't rescue me normally. And I didn't want to go through that again. And as I was tumbling off my roof, and I was trying to figure out how am I going to stop, I shoved my arm into the rain gutter, cut the piss out of my arm because I didn't have a shirt on. I had a short sleeve shirt on, but I stopped myself from rolling over the edge. And I shimmied back up to the top of my roof. My hose was there. And I crouched down and I started hosing down my roof because embers were now starting to blow onto my roof. None of the houses around me were on fire. These are embers that were blowing from like several hundred yards away. And then I got off my roof and I walked down the street and around the corner, and you'll see these pictures of 200-foot tall flames that are about 100 yards away from me. And it was just me and two street workers standing there in awe, just wondering, what are we going to do? This is insanity. It was scary. It was really, really scary. And I realized that I better get home and put some stuff in my car and get ready to bail. And so I did that. And at about 9 o'clock, the palm tree across the street from me went up in smoke, went up in flames, big gust of wind. I got showered with burning embers. I couldn't put them out fast enough on my roof. So I said, okay, I'm gone. I grabbed Lola. I grabbed my picture of Jerry Garcia. I grabbed my medicine and I grabbed my passport, got in my Volt, and I left. And I was able to get around all the cars that had been left on the street, which subsequently got bulldozed off the street by, if you saw that on the news, that was right around the corner from me. And I couldn't get out of the Palisades. Every street was blocked or completely closed off. And I was the only residential automobile. And I went to Temescal Canyon, and where Pali High was on fire. I couldn't get down Temescal to PCH, and I couldn't go east of Temescal on Sunset because everything was on fire already. So then I turned around, went west, and tried to get down to PCH off Sunset to the very end, went west. Couldn't do that. So now I'm saying to myself, holy shit, what am I going to do? I can't get out of here. What am I going to do? And then I remembered that the Bel Air Bay Club had a back entrance. And I said to myself, I said, Self, I bet no one's guarding that. And so I jammed down to it, and it was just maybe a dozen cop cars that had staged there. And I blew by them really quickly. No one wanted to chase me or anything. There was a couple small fires around the parking lot at the Bel Air Bay Club. I went down to the Bel Air Bay, and I went down and I got to PCH, and I was the only car on PCH. All there were fire trucks, EMS, and cop cars. I saw fire trucks going north on the bike path, which is not on PCH, because there was so much debris in the road on PCH. There were telephone poles that had been on fire and wires that were whipping around in the wind. I mean, it looked like an apocalyptic, cataclysmic thing. And it was nuts. I shot a lot of footage. I'm selling that footage right now to Channel 4 in London because they heard about it. And I did a lot of posts on Facebook. For me, it was very, very cathartic. And I gave a very detailed play-by-play. And I had a lot of people, many hundreds of people paying attention. And I drove down, I took movies of myself weaving in and out of north and southbound lanes because there was wood burning on the road. It was like, driving through a movie set. And I got to PCH and Chautauqua, where Patrick's Roadhouse was. And if you'll see by one of the videos I'm sending you that all there was parked on the side were 24 fire trucks lined up waiting to go somewhere. I have no idea. And I just pulled over on PCH, turned on my emergency blinkers, grabbed Lola, who was sort of wigging out, and I was sort of wigging out. And then 7 cop cars pulled up in back of me, the big SUV ones, and no one got out of their cop cars. They just were on my tail. And I was saying to myself, what are they doing? So I got out of my car. I walked up to one. I had on my dark glasses. It's pitch black out, but the smoke was so bad, and I didn't have glasses. I just had my goggles. And I walked up to a cop car and he rolled down the window and he says, "Are you all right, sir?" And I go, "No, I'm not all right. I think my house is burning down right now, and my dog and I have nowhere to go. Would you mind if I just stayed here? I'm not going to go to sleep. I'm just going to leave my emergency blinkers on, and I want to stay here overnight until I can figure out what the hell I'm going to do." And they said, "We'll let you stay here for another hour." At this time, it's about 10:15. And so I stayed for a half hour and then continued driving down PCH, past all the fire trucks you've seen in this video. And I had nowhere to go, so I pulled over again, and the only thing I could think of was to call my lawyer. And I called my lawyer, and she said, "Do you remember talking to me?" And I go, "I didn't talk to anybody." She said, "We called you and you were on your roof, and a lot of people called you when you were on your roof, apparently." I don't remember talking to anybody. Apparently, I had over 35 phone calls that I spoke to people telling me, get out of there. You're the last one there. You're going to go up and smoke with, don't be a hero, blah, blah, blah. I don't remember having a conversation with anyone.
Okay, because Jon, we are all watching the news and we're watching your Facebook posts.
Right.
And Tim and I talked about it on our first show of the year. And we are like, that is our friend. That is where his house is. I mean, but I get it. That you are trying to do what you can. Yeah, my home's going to be okay. I'm going to be positive. And then that second when you realize
it ain't going to happen.
It was terrifying. It was terrifying for us watching everything that was going on and knowing you were there. And again,
it was pretty crazy. And I was the only resident in the area. There was nobody there. Everyone had already bailed. And so my lawyer says, "Come over to my house. You'll stay here." I go to her house, and I'm a huge deadhead, and I lost a lot of original stuff from the dead and artwork and stuff like that. And I went onto Facebook to a Facebook page I belong to called the Dead Lot, Dead Lot, and it's for artisans. It's for people that make art out of cups, and they make drink coasters and tie-dye shirt, tie-dye, all that stuff. And they bring it to dead shows to sell. And I posted that picture of me and Lola. And I said, I lost everything in the fire. All I want to do is buy. I didn't ask for anything. I said, I want to buy a set of coasters for the house I'm now living in. And I'm willing to pay for it. The post I made, I got 1,400 letters from all around the world saying this is a horrible story, because I went into detail and what had happened. It wasn't like 3 seconds and I'm paraphrasing like I'm doing now. I really got into it because for me it was very cathartic. And people said, we feel so bad for you. And the next thing I knew, I have more Grateful Dead clothing that has been sent to me for free from artisans than I have regular clothes now. And I don't wear this stuff 24/7 at all. I wear it once in a while when I go see a show. I have 13 sets of coasters. I've got 5 sets of crystal cut glass with Dead logos. I have 25 long sleeve Dead shirts. I've got 35 short sleeve Dead shirts. I've got artwork on my wall that people have sent me. And nobody asked for money. It was the greatest show of community. That's why when you go to a Grateful Dead show, you see a lot of kids who've never seen them. I've seen them several hundred times before Garcia died. And the community, it's like an old hippie community where it was just peace, love, and peace, love, fortitude, and giving. And that's how people treated me, when they saw this. And I got so many presents and things. And I was dumbfounded because I got them from all over the world, not just LA, not just up north, but from everywhere. I was getting boxes. I got something 2 weeks ago still, and that's 2.5 months after the fire. And I was just so blown away at the generosity of people, because you don't find that around. You don't. I challenge anyone to show me a nicer group, a more caring group of people than the people in this community, because they don't exist.
We'll be right back after these messages.
There are only a select few relationships that can ever come close to that of grandmother and her grandchildren. Such is the case with Journey and her grandmother. Journey and her granny love each other dearly. Journey looks up to her grandmother in every aspect of her life, a love reciprocated with her grandmother's every action. If it is something as little as a new crayon box, Granny always is excited for her little Journey, as she means the world to her. This book is about such relationships, pure and delicate as one that's with Journey. Grab your copies today to find out about the sweet and genuine love between a granddaughter and her grandmother in Gillian Bell's new book, Are You Aware?
Welcome back to the show. What are you doing to emotionally progress past the loss of...
I drink heavily. No, I'm just kidding.
Do not try this at home. Yeah.
No, what I did was, for the next 6 weeks, anytime I talked about my experience with someone, I would break down and I'd start tearing up. I mean, Heidi saw it a couple times, I think, because I spent some time with she and her husband, Steve, and the dogs. And slowly but surely, I started to come out of my funk. There's a silver lining in my particular story that's around a very, very dark cloud, and that's simply this. For the last 4 years, I've been trying to figure out how I could downsize my house and all my possessions. Kids are out of the house. I don't live with anybody, just me and Lola. But my garage, which had my race cars in it and was a virtual hardware store, who's going to buy all this stuff? So I just sort of blew it off and said, all right, I'm just going to hang in here, live here until I die, and then let my my beneficiary deal with it, or my executor, and leave it at that. Well, I lost everything, but then when I started doing my insurance claims, I was heavily insured for the contents of my house, and I got far more money than I ever could have hoped to get if I had sold it all. And so that took a huge load off my shoulders, and I didn't have to deal with it anymore. I lost the first draft, the original first draft of the movie The Empire Strikes Back, that my father's client wrote with all of George Lucas's notes and the original treatment. And that's the last thing I'm arguing with the insurance company out over, because it's worth a lot of money. And they don't think it is, and I'm saying, oh, it is, and and I've got the proof now, but I lost all that stuff, and you can't get it back.
And you have your life. I think the important thing is you have Lola, you have love from the community, not just the community that supported you and sent you the gifts and the cool things, from the entertainment community and all the people that you've known for so many years, and they stood behind you. And one of the things that Heidi, like one of the things that you say is, life always comes full circle, but it's always ebb and flow.
You really want to know the truth.
I think in any disaster, in any major moment, in any catastrophe, it could be, and for some families, the catastrophe is losing a grandma. So I don't mean just like burning down of a house and of a community and of a city. At any, however you define that catastrophe, humans will show you who they really are. So Heidi, what do you think?
Jon, thank you so much for being on our show. I feel like you have this whole new exciting chapter that's going to be happening. And I don't think you even really know what is you're supposed to be doing, but I believe it's continuing to share. And I am very proud of you. Again, thank you for being on our show today. It was wonderful having you as a guest. And of course, little Lola. In closing out, our guest for the next show is author Julie Fingerish. So I'll be looking forward to everybody meeting her. But again, Jon Brown, love you. Can't wait to see you soon. And my brother, when you come in town, we are literally going to have a party. So you can meet Jon.
Yeah, I want to meet you.
Yeah.
I want to meet you too. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for being on the show. And, for all the folks who are watching, you just got a treat. And you can find us not only on Spotify, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram, all one word, I Love Wine and Dogs. And we will see you at our next episode.
Take care. Bye.
Take care.